Thank you. The next item of business is a statement by Angus Robertson on Creative Scotland multi-year funding. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of his statement, and therefore there should be no interventions or interruptions. I call on Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson to speak. Up to 10 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and thank you for the opportunity to address Parliament today regarding Creative Scotland's multi-year funding programme and today's announcement of successful applicants. We spoke here on the 14th of January about the importance of the culture sector and why it is such a vital asset to Scotland, to our society and to our economy. And I'm always heartened by the strong consensus here on the centrality of culture to our prosperity as a nation. Recent years have been turbulent for the sector. The effects of the pandemic, leaving the European Union, the cost of living crisis and the impact of UK government financial austerity, they don't need to be rehearsed again now. However, they have put many cultural organisations in a perilous position. Our role and that of our public bodies in this period has been, as far as possible, to protect the sector against the worst of the challenges. Today's announcement has been keenly anticipated, and it definitively moves us beyond simply sustaining the sector to return our focus to where it should be, its long-term development. The Scottish Government's commitment to increase culture budgets by £100 million annually by 2028-29 firmly sits in this space and demonstrates our commitment to the sector's future. Multi-year funding is important because by providing long-term certainty, it lays the foundations on which a diverse range of Scotland's key cultural organisations can build. It will allow the organisations that have secured support to pursue their core work and move on from a difficult period, while also supporting the wider cultural ecosystem in Scotland. Artists and venues will benefit through work commissioned by funded organisations, through use of their spaces by touring artists who will bring performances and exhibitions to communities across the country, and it will provide opportunities for people across Scotland to engage in culture, which for many may be the first step on a lifelong and life-enriching interest, or even the beginnings of a career in the arts. The way in which multi-year funding is being delivered will have a very practical impact on the levels of support available to the sector. Through increasing the number of organisations in receipt of core funding, it will free up Creative Scotland's wider resources by reducing the number of organisations competing for it. Today's announcement is the beginning of a new period for the sector, one which can look to the future. Scotland's culture sector is one of our most important assets. Our artists and cultural organisations are innovative and internationally respected while being grounded in our local communities and have an authenticity that gives them their unique character. This package will provide stability and allow the sector to get back to what it does best, creating interesting, innovative and challenging output that enriches our lives. And I'd like to take this opportunity to formally thank Robert Wilson, Ian Munro and everybody at Creative Scotland involved in the multi-year funding process, and also to culture sector supporters who've all played a role in delivering this transformational change. In her statement on the 4th of December, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance outlined an increase of £34 million in the culture budget for 2025-26. The largest element of this increase is £20 million from multi-year funding. Subject to budgetary processes, we will increase the culture budget by a further £20 million in 2026-27, and this additional funding will go in whole towards multi-year funding, taking the budget for the programme to £74 million, more than doubling it from current levels. This level of funding will allow Creative Scotland to make awards to all applicants that met the criteria for the fund. It will mean that more organisations than ever before are supported with core funding. 251 organisations will receive funding from 2025-26. A number of applicants that narrowly missed out will join a development stream in which they will receive advice and financial support to adapt plans with the aim that they would receive multi-year funding from 26-27. Creative Scotland currently supports 119 organisations with regular funding, so this represents a dramatic increase. It means that 95% of organisations that reach stage 2 of the multi-year funding process will either receive grants or have the opportunity to do so from 2026 to 2027. Not only will numbers of organisations supported increase, but so will the levels of grant. When we compare multi-year awards to grants to current regularly funded organisations, we see that average grant levels will increase by 33% in year 1 of multi-year funding and by 54% in year 2. By delivering funding in this way, it will ensure that as many organisations as possible are supported in the coming year, and that all funded organisations can see a path ahead of them, building their work and unleashing their potential. Organisations across the whole of Scotland will be supported across diverse art forms and with diverse impacts. I hope that this addresses a concern I've heard that resource would be spread too thinly. This represents a significant increase in both the number of funded organisations and also the level of grants. It has the potential to be truly transformational, securing the future of cultural organisations of all sizes across the whole of the country. For those organisations whose applications have not been successful, there will be transitional support available. This will be in the form of funding for organisations that previously received a significant level of funding from Creative Scotland. All organisations unsuccessful at this stage of the process, whether previously funded or not, will be able to access transition advice. And these measures will support adaptation and business planning. The foundations that the delivery of multi-year funding puts in place provides an opportunity to look to the wider needs of the sector. Through the funding proposed in the budget, we will increase support across a range of other programmes. This includes a £4 million Culture and Heritage Capacity Fund, which will build resilience in museums and galleries. The Festival's Expo Fund will be more than doubled in value and expand its reach beyond Edinburgh and Glasgow. Screen Scotland's Production Growth Fund will receive an additional £2 million to attract investment in Scotland and the screen sector. The Culture Collective programme will restart with an increased budget of £4 million, providing opportunities for communities across Scotland. And we will undertake groundwork into the establishment of a cultural export and exchange service to enhance the role that international activity can play in the sector's development. Taken together, these measures create a comprehensive package of support that is focused on the diverse impacts that the culture sector has. Multi-year funding allows us to look beyond the immediate and to focus on new, innovative and transformational interventions. It's important, as part of this foundational shift, that the infrastructure that supports the sector is considered, and I'm delighted that Dame Sue Bruce will lead an independent review of Creative Scotland, its remit and functions, which will aim to publish recommendations by the end of the summer this year. This will be part of a wider review into how the culture sector is supported as a whole. The scope of this work will be informed by responses to a public survey which closes tomorrow. Together, these pieces of work will ensure that the increased resources we are committing to the sector will achieve the greatest impact they possibly can. I was pleased to see earlier this week that the Scottish Green Party and Scottish Liberal Democrat members will support the Government's budget for 2025-26, following constructive engagement and discussion. By passing the proposed budget, we will lay the foundations for Scotland's artists and cultural organisations to create, to innovate, develop and engage locally and internationally. It will uphold the vital role of the sector in our society, communities and the economy. In conclusion, I hope that today's statement has provided members with assurance that Creative Scotland's multi-year funding awards will begin a foundational shift in how Scotland's culture sector is supported. The scale of awards, both in their number and in their financial value, represents one of the most significant and positive developments in the sector for many, many years. Alongside a range of other interventions, they provide a basis for Scotland's culture sector as a whole to look to the future with optimism and excitement about the opportunities that they will create. I'm aware that members will have questions and I'm pleased to answer those now. Thank you very much, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in the statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for that, after which time we will move on to the next item of business. And it would be helpful if those members who wish to seek to ask a question could press the request to speak buttons, and I call Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his statement and for advance sight of it. The culture sector is vitally important to Scotland, not just as an enrichment of our national identity, but also because of the economic importance of it, worth billions to the Scottish economy and attracting visitors from around the world. And it has been a turbulent time in the culture sector in Scotland, not just down to the reasons mentioned in the statement by the Cabinet Secretary, but down to the choices made by his government, with cuts in projects, uncertainty over future funding and questions over the credibility of Creative Scotland. So against that backdrop, the announcement of multi-year funding, long called for by the sector, will provide some certainty and security for arts organisations and is welcome. But let me ask 3 questions to the Cabinet Secretary in relation to his budget choices. Firstly, we know that arts organisations across Scotland, including theatre companies, are struggling as a result of the increase in costs from Labour's jobs tax. To what extent will the increased funding announced today offset those increases? Secondly, I've raised before in this chamber, as the Cabinet Secretary knows, the question of financial support for larger music venues, who in Scotland are not getting the benefit of rates relief available south of the border, because the government has chosen to spend the Barnett consequentials in a different way. Will he, even at this late hour, reconsider that position of the government? And thirdly, Presiding Officer, as we know, a huge proportion of the arts scene, including theatres and other venues, are supported by local authorities. And what they are telling us right now is that they face funding cuts and in some cases even closure due to the very difficult position local authorities are in. So can he tell us, will this extra funding ensure we will not see closures in local arts facilities funded through local authorities, and will he reassure them that none of them face closure?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, firstly, can I take the opportunity to welcome Murdo Fraser's welcome? It took a while, but he got there, and so I congratulate him for it. And I don't want to be churlish. I genuinely don't want to be churlish, because I hope that colleagues across the chamber do understand that what has been announced by Creative Scotland and what is funded through the Scottish Government to be able to do so is absolutely transformational for the arts. And I know that in particular because the feedback from people elsewhere in the UK that do not have multi-annual year funding is a testament to how significant a change this is. So it is very welcome, and I genuinely appreciate the support of colleagues in other parties. He asked 3 questions on relation to offsetting the UK Labour Government's job tax. I would observe that the applications for funding to the multi-year funding process took place before the announcement of the additional costs which the Labour Chancellor has foisted on them. He asked me to make an impression on what impact might that have. I'm going to have to get back to him on all that. But we know already in conversations from cultural organisations that it's problematic. Of course, we've asked the UK Government to reimburse the Scottish Government so we can deal with these things, and we know we're not getting all of the money. So it's a problem. Question 2, he asked about larger music venues. I've said I'm keen to support venues as much as we possibly can. It's not the first time that I've asked Murdo Fraser to show me his workings on that, so I'll ask him again, please. I'm sure he's just forgotten it or it's in the post. Please let me know how he would wish us to do that in the budget and what we would have to cut to make that happen. I look forward to the details from him. And on local authorities is a slightly different point. I'm sure the presiding officer would wish to remind me that this is in relation to the announcements of Creative Scotland's multi-annual year funding. Yes, there is an impact in some some places because the use of local facilities by funded organisations and so on. It's a longer conversation which I'm happy to continue having with Murdo Fraser. As I think I said to him already in portfolio questions, I met with the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities only this week to work out how we can better coordinate and support one another in working between the Scottish Government and local authorities, and I'm committed to doing that. We want to maintain as much of our cultural infrastructure as possible. And just a last thought, perhaps, from Murdo and his colleagues, if they're so keen on all of these changes, I'd invite them to vote for it in the budget.
Thank you. I would remind everybody that we only have a limited time for this statement, and I'm keen to get in as many members as possible so they too have a chance to ask their questions. Neil Bibby.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of his statement. Scottish Labour welcomes the increase in funding for the culture sector, which of course has been helped by the new UK Labour Government's record budget settlement for Scotland. We have consistently called on the Scottish Government to keep their commitments to the sector and to end the constant cycle of promises followed by cuts under the SNP, which has left the sector in crisis for far too long. After lengthy delays, we are now finally seeing a step in the right direction, but claims this will be truly transformational are questionable given the effects of years of standstill funding and inflationary pressures. The Cabinet Secretary said a number of organisations narrowly missed out. How many organisations did miss out, and what does transition support for them mean in practice? The Cabinet Secretary also stated the average uplift in grants. Can he tell us what the range of those uplifts are? How many organisations received what they asked for in full, and what other support will be provided or is being considered by the Government to organisations not in receipt of government funding or those who have not been funded in full?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, firstly, can I take the opportunity again to welcome Neil Bibby's welcome, which came straight out of the trap. So thank you very much to Neil Bibby for that. We all have a stake in this. When we make speeches committing to the culture sector, I think it contributes to a more general understanding of how important culture and the arts is, and opposition and government play a role in that. So I'd like to commend him for his support in that endeavour. He says it's a step in the right direction. It is a step in the right direction. It's a massive step in the right direction, and I know that arts organisations in the rest of the UK would wish, amongst others, the Labour UK government to introduce what we're doing in Scotland here. Neil Bibby's asked me a number of technical questions in relation to the decisions made by Creative Scotland. And I would say to him, whilst I'm here to announce in general terms the Government's reaction to the decisions made by Creative Scotland, he's asked some very technical questions, and what I would say is that I will make sure that those technical questions are answered directly by Creative Scotland in the same way as they are from the likes of Historic Environment Scotland in the normal way in this chamber, and I look forward to seeing those answers from Creative Scotland, who are an arm's-length organisation, of course. I would wish to assure him, though, that this is much more than a step in the right direction. He did point out the issue of organisations which did not receive support or are receiving transitional support, and I am satisfied that that will put the applicants as a whole to work in the right direction on a firmer financial footing. But I'll make sure that Creative Scotland answer directly to him.
I would reiterate that we have a limited time. I'm keen to get everybody who wishes to ask a question to pose their question, but that is looking less likely now, I have to say. Succinct questions and answers always helpful. I call Claire Adamson, to be followed by Alexander Stewart.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The delivery of multi-year funding is a significant development. It was called for by stakeholders who gave evidence to the Culture Committee, and it has been welcomed widely by the sector. Creative Scotland's plan will see a largest ever number of cultural organisations securing regular funding, and I'm delighted that Real Time Music in my own constituency will be one of the 13 development organisations who are going to benefit from the £3.2 million development fund. So I can ask the Cabinet Secretary to outline the Scottish Government's engagement with Creative Scotland regarding the number and range of organisations that are anticipated may benefit from these plans.
Well, can I assure Claire Adamson that we have had regular meetings, both myself as a Cabinet Secretary but my officials with Creative Scotland. This, of course, has been a This has been a process run by Creative Scotland, which is an arm's-length organisation, but we have a responsibility as a sponsoring organisation that funds Creative Scotland to satisfy ourselves about the process, and I am. And what I would encourage all other members and people watching these proceedings, if one wants to have a better understanding of the results, is to visit the Creative Scotland website, and one is able to download the list of all successful applicants, and I would wish to, on this stage, congratulate every single one of them.
Call Alexander Stewart, to be followed by George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Cabinet Secretary, it is commendable and to be welcomed that Creative Scotland have been awarded this multi-year funding, which will provide more stability for future planning for the arts and creative sector. However, what safeguards have been put in place to ensure that funding is correctly allocated going forward and never again distributed to inappropriate projects such as the infamous Wren project?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, firstly, may I welcome the fact that the development is commendable, and I think that is appropriate. In relation to safeguards, he sits on the committee that has heard evidence from Creative Scotland about the safeguards that they have introduced, and he also has an opportunity as a member of that committee to ask Creative Scotland directly about that. I'm sure he will do that, and I'm sure he will assure himself, as I have, that the likes of the project that he raises will not be repeated in the future.
I call George Adam, to be followed by Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome support of the Scottish Greens and the Liberal Democrats for the Scottish Government's draft budget. Given that it appears that the Tories will vote against the budget and Labour will abstain, can I ask the Cabinet Secretary to outline the consequences for the culture sector should multi-year funding not be supported?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, if the budget weren't passed, then multi-annual year funding won't happen. So this is not a theoretical question, and that's why even at this stage I would appeal for those who say they support culture but will vote against the budget, or those people who say they support culture but are going to bravely abstain on the question. Perhaps they want to reconsider. I think this is reason enough to support the budget and the transitional change that it will bring for the culture sector.
I call Faisal Chowdhury, to be followed by Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I welcome the funding for cultural organisations made possible by the UK Labour Government's record budget settlement, particularly the funding of Edinburgh's festival, which attracts millions of people to Scotland each year. But the cultural sector should not just be fighting for its survival. Festivals have struggled with standstill government's funding for years, stunting their growth. Can the Cabinet Secretary advise how the Scottish Government is supporting organisations to attract private or other sources of funding, and how will he ensure the delays on multi-year funding, which caused so much uncertainty in the sector, are not repeated?
Well, again, can I take the opportunity to welcome the welcome from colleagues, and he's absolutely right about the importance of the funding to the Edinburgh International Festival, and I should declare an interest, as I am the member of the Scottish Parliament for Edinburgh Central, which is home to the Edinburgh International Festival. But not just that, the Edinburgh Art Festival, the Edinburgh International Book Festival, the Edinburgh International Jazz and Blues Festival, and I could go on. There are a lot of organisations based in Scotland's capital, as there are right across the country, who have been successful as part of the process. That is a good thing. In terms of wider funding that could be raised through philanthropy, that's an ongoing process that I will be happy to speak further with Faisal Chowdhury. But I would just end on a point I've made a number of times now. One can't just wish the means, one actually has to make decisions to support things happening. So even at this late stage, Faisal Chowdhury might want to vote for the budget and not just say he supports culture, he might actually vote for it.
I call Kevin Stewart, to be followed by Gillian Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The funding boost to Aberdeen Performing Arts, City Moves Dance and Peacock and the Worm, amongst others, will not only sustain existing institutions, but will also support new voices and emerging talent from Aberdeen. I'm particularly pleased to see new funding being allocated to the much-loved Belmont Cinema. Can the Cabinet Secretary assure Parliament that cultural funding will continue to benefit all of Scotland? And will he join me in celebrating the cultural offering that Aberdeen and the North East gifts to our nation?
Cabinet Secretary.
Organisations right across the whole of Scotland will benefit from these awards. 35% of all organisations awarded funding work nationally, no matter where their base is, and I can assure Kevin Stewart that organisations based in Aberdeen and the north east of Scotland will receive support. Across Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, 13 organisations, including 6 that have not received core funding from Creative Scotland previously, have been successful. That includes the Belmont Community Cinema, which pleases me particularly.
I call Gillian Mackay to be followed by Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thanks, Deputy Presiding Officer. In recent weeks, the Culture Committee has highlighted how it's all too easy for some production companies to bring crews to Scotland to film projects to then just return to London. Could the Cabinet Secretary outline how the funding to Screen Scotland will help to strengthen and diversify the range of screen professionals and careers in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, in the budget, there is an allocation for a significant additional resources for Screen Scotland, and that will help them through the Production Growth Fund attract and develop more screen projects from Scotland and wanting to take place in Scotland. I share with the member concerns that have recently been highlighted around productions in Scotland not receiving full value here in Scotland. I remain seized of that. I've discussed it with the BBC. I am in an ongoing dialogue with Ofcom to make sure that those concerns can be assuaged, because it's in everybody's interest that the screen sector goes from strength to strength. Currently valued at £635 million per annum in GVA, we all hope it can become a £1 billion industry by 2030. We all have a stake in that.
I call Alex Cole-Hamilton to be followed by Clay Hockey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. With the Scottish Liberal Democrat backing, the budget will deliver tens of millions more for dance, music, theatre, literature, screen and more. After the last few years of uncertainty, of people being messed around by government, that extra funding will go a long way indeed. And I want to congratulate those who've been successfully awarded with grants. But it is a huge amount of work to apply for any of these funds. It's a burden of tens and tens of pages of application form that are often performed by tiny companies. It must take ages for people sifting and analysing these applications to go through it. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, will the ongoing review of Creative Scotland examine how this can be streamlined? Because the more time they spend on admin, the less time they have to spend doing good in our communities.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, firstly, can I commend Alex Cole-Hamilton for actually supporting the budget, which is able to deliver the progress for the cultural sector. So it's good to be working collectively on that. He highlights one of the great advantages of multi-annual year funding, which is this: it means, of course, we have to ensure that funds are properly applied for, and there are processes. There's no ways around that. But to do this on a multi-annual year basis, meaning one doesn't have to do this every year because one receives funding 2 to 3 years down the road, means that that burden is reduced. Should the review look at that? Yes, absolutely. No doubt it will. But I think multi-annual year funding will change things significantly. It's one of the game changers that this introduction will bring to Scotland, something I know that the culture sector elsewhere in the UK is keen to follow suit with.
I call Clay Hockey to be followed by Stephen Kerr.
My Rutherglen constituency is home to many talented musicians, actors and many other professions in the creative sector. Can the Cabinet Secretary outline what organisations in the South Lanarkshire local authority area will benefit from this very welcome announcement of multi-year funding?
Cabinet Secretary.
In South Lanarkshire, the Scottish Music Industry Association and Soundplay projects have been successful in securing funding, and I congratulate them. Soundplay projects have not previously received core funding from Creative Scotland. As well as these organisations, more than a third of all successful applicants operate nationally, benefiting South Lanarkshire and the whole of the country.
I call Stephen Kerr to be followed by Emma Harper.
The Cabinet Secretary will know that we on these benches are greatly exercised about value for taxpayers' money and the measurement of outcomes. So can he perhaps expand on how this public expenditure fits with the National Performance Framework, and how can we have assurance that the money being spent is being spent appropriately and transparently within the organisations that are receiving these multi-year funding settlements?
The Chair, Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the first thing is I would repeat the point that I made about in relation to the screen sector, because we're able to evidence the growth in that sector. So with relatively small interventions of public funding, that helps lever in private sector support, which I know that he's in favour of, and I am too. I'm confident that this injection of support into the arts and culture sector will have a significant impact and a positive impact and I would wish to assure him that I'm confident that the knock-on benefits that this will have in the wider economy will be beneficial. We will be monitoring that. No doubt Creative Scotland will be, and as somebody who's described himself as being greatly exercised, no doubt he will too in the future.
I call Emma Harper to be followed by Colin Smith.
I've worked with many festival organisers in Galloway, such as Big Burn Supper, Stranraer Oyster Festival, and there are others like the Kirkcudbright Festival Light and the Wigton Book Festival. And one thing raised is the need for festivals in rural areas to receive the same recognition and funding as those in the Central Belt. And the Cabinet Secretary mentioned Festival Expo Fund. Can he describe further this Expo Fund and how it will support festivals beyond Edinburgh and Glasgow, including in Galloway and the Borders?
Cabinet Secretary.
Firstly, may I say how delighted I am that a number of organisations in Dumfries and Galloway will receive awards, including 4 that have not previously received core funding from Creative Scotland. And Emma Harper is absolutely correct to suggest that we should recognise the impact of festivals beyond the Central Belt, which is why, separately to multi-year funding, we are more than doubling support for the Festivals Expo Fund and expanding its reach beyond Edinburgh and Glasgow. This is an example of how the Strategic Partnership for Scotland's Festivals will provide further opportunities to explore how best to support festivals in rural areas.
And I can squeeze in a question from Mr Smith if he is brief.
Thank you, President Officer. Cabinet Secretary, given the fact we have lost a lot of festivals in Dumfries and Galloway and there is a clear inequality when it comes to funding those festivals, can he give a guarantee that the announcement today will tackle that regional inequality that we see when it comes to support for festivals, particularly in Dumfries and Galloway?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, firstly, I'll make sure that the member receives the link to the funding announcement so he can satisfy himself that there's a significant improvement throughout the country. But he's drawing attention more to the work, frankly, of the strategic partnership in relation to festivals and festival support, which I am personally chairing. And the reason why I'm so invested in that is I want to make sure that festivals right across the country go from strength to strength, and I'm happy to work with him and other colleagues to make sure that that is what happens.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes the statement, and there will be a very short pause before we move on to the next item of business to facilitate the switch over of front bench teams. Thank you.